All right, welcome everyone. I think we are with it tonight. Welcome to our second in the series of the AARP Juno Community Action Team and Commission on Sustainability series on carbon footprint, climate change, and sustainability. I'm Linda Kruger, and I'm the local lead for AARP Juno. And I'm here tonight with one of our co-sponsors for this series, Steve Banke from the Juneau Commission on Sustainability, and he'll be up in a minute. We're also receiving assistance tonight from Teresa Holt, our AARP Alaska State Director, and Katie Severin, who's our Associate Director for Communication, and they're helping out in the background. I'd like to start the evening by acknowledging that the City and Borough of Juneau is on the land of the Lakatnedi and Wishkitan of the Aquan and the Ishkitan of the Takuquan. These clans have been an integral part of our community's history, and because of their resilience, they continue to live on their land today. We are able to enjoy this beautiful place because of the wise stewardship practiced by the ancestors of these clans, and we're grateful for their continuing stewardship and care. Gunashish. I'd also like to thank Lillian Peter Shore for her guidance and assistance with this acknowledgement. Gunashish. AARP is the largest member organization in Alaska with over 75,000 members aged 50 and older. The AARP mission is to enrich the quality of life and empower people to choose how they live as they age. With 38 million members nationwide, AARP advocates for and works to equip each individual to live their best life. AARP believes strongly in the principles of collective purpose, collective voice, and the collective power of the 50+ population. Dr. Carolyn Brown brought this idea of this series to our Juneau AARP Community Action Team, and we thought it was a great idea that fit with our mission. So we contacted the Juneau Commission of Sustainability member Steve Banke, who put us in touch with Julie Grantham, and we were on our way to parenting and partnering on this series. So through the series, we hope to increase community engagement by presenting useful information and practical solutions that can be implemented at the community, family, and individual level. We hope these sessions empower people to take action in whatever ways are appropriate and feasible. One of AARP's focus areas is livable communities, addressing the challenges of climate change and taking meaningful individual and collective action to reduce carbon are part of making our community more livable, all of our communities more livable. Collective action, as we will explore in our final session, is itself beneficial as the social connection has been found to promote health and increase hope. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Steve Banke to get on with the show. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you, Linda. I'm Steve Banke. I'm a member of the Juneau Commission on Sustainability, which is the City and Borough of Juneau's advisory body on sustainability issues. We focused a lot on Juneau's climate action and renewable energy goals, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about at the end of the session. We're delighted to be partnering with the Alaska AARP to put this series together. The purpose of this session is to help you figure out how to make your home greener, in two senses: by reducing its carbon footprint impact on climate, and by saving you some greenbacks. Many of the measures we're going to be talking about also have other benefits. They'll make your home more comfortable and healthier. And speaking of the money side of green, I need to tell you about Alaska's billion-dollar bonfire, which I've stolen from Chris Rose, the head of the REAP. It's the idea that Alaskans spend somewhere between $5 and $6 billion a year on energy, depending on the price of gas and oil. And they waste at least 20, and we waste at least 20% of it due to inefficiencies. So that's at least $1 billion a year that goes up in smoke, carbon, wasted money every year. And reducing this waste is a huge opportunity at the household level, for businesses, in terms of opportunities to figure out how to help people save that energy, for community economies, and for the health of the earth. In Juneau, like most communities, buildings account for around 30 to 33% of that energy and for about 30% of our carbon emissions. The other major source of carbon footprint, of course, is transportation, which we'll be discussing in our next session in 2 weeks. Typical homes in Juneau burn somewhere between, at the small end, a small house with a monitor heater, 340 gallons of oil a year, up to 1,700 gallons, a large house, 3,200 square foot or so with a boiler system, costing somewhere between, so people spend between $1,300 and $5,500 annually heating, and they produce CO2 emissions ranging between 4 tons and 19 tons per year. So quite a range there, but just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the challenge and the opportunity. The presentations this evening are going to start out with a big picture of how your house uses energy and emits carbon and where it's wasted, and then tips on reducing them. And then we're going to look in more detail at how energy audits can help you figure out cost-effective strategies for making improvements. And that's going to be followed by a presentation on how to decide whether a heat pump will work for your home. There aren't many silver bullets in energy efficiency, but heat pumps in the right circumstances come the closest, potentially reducing your carbon footprint in Juneau, at least, where we have clean hydroelectricity, by 50% per year, by 50% or more. And then we're going to close by shifting from what you can do as individuals to what we can do as part of a community to address these issues. Linda, you want to run those polls for us? We've got quick question here. Where do you live? If you would pop on there and answer that, you'll give us a little idea of who we're talking to here this evening. Appreciate that. Looks like most are from Juneau and a couple from Anchorage. Next, share results. And okay, Linda, you want to do the next one? I'm not sure how to switch this off, Linda, and run to the next one.
You just select the drop-down menu. There you go.
Okay. How do you primarily heat your home? Got a multiple choice here with oil, natural gas, electric space heating, electric heat pumps, wood or pellets. We've got a pretty enlightened crowd here, it's looking like. Those Anchorage folks are heating with natural gas. Us in Juneau are heating with oil or space heating or heat pumps, which is probably not really a representative sample here this evening. So yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one, Linda. And the things, what kinds of things are you interested in learning more about this evening? We've got do-it-yourself energy saving tips, reducing home heating costs, reducing your fossil fuel use, whether a heat pump will work for you, how you can help others reduce their carbon footprint. Looks like we're getting a pretty good mix here, and these are kind of the areas that we're intending to cover this evening. And I'm glad to see interest in that last one about helping others. We're going to touch on that at the end of the evening here. Linda, I think we can shut that off. And I would like to introduce Senator Jesse Keel this evening. I asked him to participate in this because he and I had some conversations probably 2 years ago about his thinking about getting a heat pump. I was interested in hearing some follow-up on that. I also figured it couldn't hurt to have a senator who knows something about energy and about the issues involved in energy efficiency. So we thought it might be a good way to pass some information along to him that might come in handy. So Jesse, thank you for participating.
Well, thanks, Steve and Linda. Thanks to everybody here, the Juneau Commission on Sustainability and AARP, Heat Smart, the other groups who are doing this. This is a great event, and the previous ones have been excellent. I'm looking forward to the rest. I know Steve mentioned my day job. I do serve in the Alaska State Senate, but I'm not here for my title. I am clearly here for my dashing good looks. Okay, maybe not. Since that's clearly not applicable, I'm here to tell just a couple of stories, and I promise not to take too terribly long. But I want to jump in the Wayback Machine with you here, because back in the year 2000, my wife and I were first-time homebuyers, and we bought a little old downtown Juneau house. And when I say old, I mean that not every insurance company that does homeowners insurance in Alaska will write a house, will insure a house as old as mine. It was built in 1897. And of course, I was born and raised in Anchorage, so I can just reassure all you Anchorage people, you don't have to worry about having a house that old. They don't exist in your neck of the woods, my old hometown. But we were first-time homebuyers. And so we knew with an old house, we'd have a lot of work to do on it through the years. But one thing we were confident in, it had a brand new oil boiler. It was like 2.5 years old, right? So didn't have to worry about that. Fast forward 6 years and 2 children, and the boiler cracked in our house. We thought, uh-oh, we just barely got back to flat after that giant down payment check. But we had been in our really big, or very small, but really old house. We'd been burning a lot of oil for heat. Steve gave you some numbers. We blew them away. We were getting 400 gallons delivered 4 or 5 times a year. And the house is not quite 900 square feet on the top floor, about 300 on the bottom. So we were really pumping the dinosaurs up the chimney. So we looked around in a hurry because we didn't have heat. And it was still late winter. And I'd heard about heat pumps, and I thought, I'm reading this stuff, and they're only good to like 20 or 30 degrees, and it gets colder than that here. I'll get an efficient boiler. And so I bought a high efficiency boiler. I had it installed. Took 10 or 15% off my oil consumption, which was cool. But skip ahead now with me in the Wayback Machine. We're going forward here. 3 years later, we're looking around the house, and all those old windowsills, window frames in the rainforest of Juneau, they were done. Right? I don't know when they were last replaced, but they were rotting out. And we had problems. And so, old house maintenance, we had things to do. At that time, the state of Alaska had the energy rebate program where they'd help out with energy efficiency stuff in your house. And I thought, well, shoot, this house has always been kind of drafty. Let's get the energy audit. And we did that, and they identified just a huge amount of work that we could do to make our house more thermally efficient, more comfortable. And I'm 2 things. I'm an inveterate control freak. I mean, do-it-yourselfer, sorry. And also, I'm small money. I'm not a guy who just writes giant checks. And so I looked at that energy audit and came up with a lot of the work I could do myself. But again, I mentioned to you, first home, right? And so I bit off more than I could chew. So we brought in contractors, and they did insulation that the house had never had before on the walls, which required new siding. They did all the windows, which I wasn't good to do myself. But I did a lot. I spent hours and hours up in the attic, sealing air leaks and adding insulation. I replaced a number of old doors that were just, heat wicks taking heat out of my house. I did work below grade on my house, getting some hard foam insulation and improving the drainage, right? So I was attending to things that needed to be done, but as you might imagine, with a 100 and at that point 12-year-old house, I think 115-year-old house, big jobs sometimes uncover big problems, and we ran into, by trying to do a lot at once, we ran into a lot of extra expenses and extra issues and extra costs. So the good news is the house was just below 2-star energy rated when we started, and it was 5 stars when we were done. And so that was great. That took our oil bill, just dropped way, way down. We weren't looking at anything close to 1,600 gallons a year. We were now looking at more like probably 650. A huge reduction. So let's jump forward in time a little bit more. We'll skip to 2019. We'll get pretty recent. And I'm thinking back on my first boiler that hadn't lasted me 10 years, or hadn't lasted the house 10 years, and I'm realizing that my high efficiency boiler is now 12 years old. I'm also thinking about climate change a little bit more than I ever had before. Some with work and some with a couple of teenagers who were paying attention to the world. And as I started to think, maybe I don't want to replace my next boiler in an emergency, what can I do? I read up. And the technology had moved forward. So instead of heat pumps being good to 20, 30 degrees, now I'm reading that they're great performers down to 25 and 30 below, which we don't see in Juneau, right? In fact, you rarely see it in Anchorage anymore. And so I started to look around. It was either Juneau Commission on Sustainability or Heat Smart had a website with a little calculator, and along with being a control freak is also being a nerd. So I had the numbers for how much oil I used, and I knew about my house. So I put those in, and I called Steve, who is a tremendous resource, and I talked with him about a heat pump. And I'm here to tell you, it was a great decision, because all I had to do as a do-it-yourselfer was level a spot outside for the installers to come. I got a couple of quotes, a couple of options from a couple different businesses. I picked the one that was the best fit for my house and the best price, and a guy with a good reputation. Took him about a day and a half once the equipment, some materials got here. And it was great. I should note, we also had a little car accident at the same time. So we got an electric car. I mentioned that because we were able to have an electrician come once and run a circuit for the heat pump and for a charger for my electric car. So my electric bill shot through the roof, but my oil bill went down again, and my fuel bill at the gas station went away completely. So I guess what I'll say is this. One other thing, those 5, 6, 8 days a year when Juneau gets sunny and hot and we get 80 degrees, and of course we all build our houses in Juneau to let in as much light as possible because it's a rainforest, and on a sunny day your house gets hot. I have air conditioning now. I just flip the heat pump to run the other direction. That's a little luxury I hadn't planned on, but it's really nice to have. So while the state is working on things like renewable energy portfolio standards for utilities and freeing up some stranded hydropower on the rail belt that can help displace diesel-fired electricity in Fairbanks and other issues, other things like that, we all have the opportunity to work on our homes. I strongly recommend phasing it and taking bites instead of trying to do mega jobs. That I still have a couple of scars, especially in my wallet. But every piece I did made my house a little bit warmer in the wintertime, less drafty, winter or summer, cheaper to operate year by year, and they all drop my carbon footprint. So in the end, I'm a little bit of an evangelist, and I hope that you will consider doing some of this kind of work at your own place. You'll be happy you did.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Really appreciate that. That's a great transition to Colleen Fisk, who talks about this kind of stuff all the time with people around the state. And I think she's going to be able to take your inspirational talk there and flesh it out with kind of some of the details of how people can go about some of those same things that you did, Jesse. So Colleen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Why don't you just go ahead and jump in?
Okay, you got me. You got it. So hello, everybody. My name is Colleen Fisk. I am the Education Director at Renewable Energy Alaska Project. And thank you, Senator Keel, for that great inspiration and lead in into my work as an EV owner and driver myself up here in Wasilla, also an evangelist for electrification. So look forward to watching the transportation session next for the AARP session. But today we're going to focus more on our efficiency side of things. And Linda gave such a lovely land acknowledgement earlier, but the only thing I'll add here is that the REAP staff are on Dena'ina lands. Most of us are up here in the Anchorage and Mat-Su area. So we're on Dena'ina and Otnanen lands. And then I also have my coworker, Clay Good, who is down in Juneau.
No.
We are a nonprofit organization, Renewable Energy Alaska Project. There are 8 of us who work around the state. Most of us, like I said, are kind of based up here in South Central Alaska, with Clay Good down in Juneau. And we do this work really focused on collaboration, which is a great thing about this series, is that you bring in so many different organizations and people to think about our carbon footprint and how we can reduce that. And my role as the education is that I do K to gray, as I like to call it, not just K-12 education, but I call it K to gray. Clay does that as well. He may be one of the gray people that I help educate from time to time. He will agree to that as well, I believe. And so we're a small organization, but we really enjoy doing this work. And even though our organization name is Renewable Energy Alaska Project, a lot of our work actually is in this energy efficiency. And my job is actually mostly funded through Alaska Housing Finance Corporation with this program called AK Energy Smart, where I provide this curriculum and lessons and presentations all around the state to all ages. And of course, their focus is on efficiency in the home as well. So this ties in really well with this work that we are doing tonight. So quick outline, this is what I'm going to talk about today. We're really going to be thinking about what are those things that you can do, and maybe not those huge projects that Senator Keel was talking about, but some of the maybe easier, smaller things that we can tackle, and kind of really being able to identify where those major areas are where we are losing energy. And of course, when our energy is coming from fossil fuels, that is an increased carbon footprint. I'll make sure that I am watching the chat. Clay is throwing in links for me as we go. And if you have any questions, throw them in the chat. And I think Linda or somebody is watching the Facebook Live as well. So if there's any questions that come through there, be able to drop them into the chat and see them as I go. So when we're talking about reducing our energy use, we talk about efficiency and conservation, and they're very similar, they're related, but conservation has to do with changing your behavior. So being able to do things that you can control, like turning off your lights, choosing to ride your bike instead of driving a car. And efficiency is changing your technology. So that using those heat pumps, which you're going to hear about even more, those are using that technology or
Speaking of technology, Steve.
Yeah.
oh no, did I freeze?
Yeah. Do you want to try turning off your
Yeah,
share?
I'll turn off my camera.
Yeah.
Tried closing everything, but
Yeah.
maybe that'll help. All right, so the cheapest and lowest carbon fuel is the fuel that you never have to use. All right, so the less that you use, the less carbon, especially when you're using those fossil fuels like us up here in South Central, using natural gas, and if you're using oil for your heating. Clay threw in the chat here one link that can be really helpful is we've developed this energy assessment checklist to be able to utilize for yourself to kind of go through your home and check these things in your own house to find where you might be able to be using less energy. And this booklet, this energy saving tips for Alaskans, Housing Finance Corporation publish every couple of years, is a great resource for you as well, especially for those smaller things that you don't have to do a huge investment in, but can really make some big impacts. And so this is something that you can download for free, or you can bug Clay at his office in Juneau. He's got a whole stack of them too. I'm sure he doesn't mind people just drop by to hang out. So this is a great resource. Now, if you know, what do you think is, or maybe if you don't know, but what is your guess? What is the #1 energy cost for Alaskans? If we think about all the ways that we use energy with heating and electricity and transportation, water heating, maybe you can throw in the chat. What do you think is our #1 energy cost for Alaskans? Yeah, thanks, Anjali, using the everyone. Option will be the easiest. Everyone can see it. Home heating. And Teresa, that's what the whole presentation is going to be about. I'm going to tell you all these cheap things you can do to save energy. Okay, home heating, heating buildings, electricity. All right, great. So it is definitely heating, wherever it is that you get your source of heating from. That is what we spend the most money on. And we kind of break this apart from our appliances. I'm sorry, is how I should have said it instead of just straight electricity, because sometimes your heating can come from electricity. So I misspoke on that, but heating is definitely our biggest energy use. And in Southeast Alaska, you can see that will be around 69% of your household energy costs will just be around space heating. So anytime you're looking for that biggest energy savings, you want to focus on things that will be able to save you on that space heating. But water heating and appliances too are going to be some great ways that you can reduce your energy use and carbon footprint. So Teresa asks, what are some of these things that you can do? I'm glad that you ask. I have a few things that are easy to go through. You can do some things like check and unblock any air vents, radiators, and registers. You could seal your fireplace when it's not in use and any other holes, as long as you're not sealing up anything that is supposed to be there for airflow, of course. You can have a professional tune your heating system. It's recommended to do that at least every year. And if you have systems that are older than 15 years old, you can replace those. Just like Senator Keel was saying in the beginning, you get the improvements that you see in those technologies, you get really big energy efficiency savings because of that. And of course, they're going to try to make the case that you should check out heat pumps as your next heating source for sure. And, don't leave your bunnies sitting on your air vents. That'll just keep the bunnies warm and not spread out the air. For your thermostats, you can actually make big savings by just turning down the temperature a little bit. So 62 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. And of course, most of us are turning off in the summer or taking advantage of that, reversing the heat pump for a little AC. And every degree that you lower for your heating can save you 2% on your heating bill. So you don't have to be in a cold, freezing, dark house to be able to save energy. You can be able to have really big savings even by just changing the thermostat by a couple of degrees and still not being uncomfortable in your house. If you can program it, if you have a heating system that you're able to program, that's going to be able to really provide big savings. So you can set back your heat, so 2 hours before you go to bed, and increase it just before you wake up, and set back, of course, when no one is home, especially if you're on vacation or gone for a weekend, or if you're away from home during the work hours. That's a big one. So once you start thinking about all this heating and making sure that you're not putting as much heat into your house, Next, you want to think about making sure that you're keeping that heat in. So you want to think about your insulation and air sealing. And so this image, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I do want to point out a couple of things, is that there are a lot of areas for heat to be leaking out or to be drawing air in, just because of whether the house doesn't have a great home envelope. This little picture up in the right corner kind of shows that envelope of how the house is sealed in. Or it could be just because you don't have great insulation. Attic is a great place to make sure that your insulation is well in there, so you're not losing heat out through the top. Vent fans, of course, we mentioned the heat, if you have fireplaces that aren't being used, dryer vents, all of these are areas, if you have leaky or cracked windows, all of these are areas where heat can be leaked out, or if you have negative air pressure, even pulling in some of that cold air. So a lot of areas to be able to be paying attention to. So what are the ones, because there's so much that's there, what are the areas that we should be paying attention to? Well, identify where those major air leaks are. So find out where those biggest ones are. Of course, you might even just know by, of course, living in the house. But if you want to be able to check, you can use like a piece of string or a small piece of paper and put it near like around windows or doors, and you can see if it moves majorly. That can be a really big air leak. Of course, so you can get some caulking that is really inexpensive to purchase at home improvement stores, and you can get caulk any of those cracks and gaps around windows or doors, replace those thresholds or attach the sweeps. Even someone who is not a great do-it-yourselfer, myself, I mean, I can do some things, all right, but definitely not as big jobs. These little jobs are very doable. I was able to replace the air sealing on my doors, for example, in a house when I purchased it. Windows, repair and insulate. Unless you have like single pane windows, it probably doesn't make sense to upgrade your windows because that can be really expensive and not a huge payback. But if they are cracked, if they have major leaks, then those are the ones that you want to make sure that you are replacing and repairing. And another little trick that I learned recently is making sure they're actually fully latched. So if you have a latch on it, that can really help make sure that you're pushing the seal in on that window so that it is not having small leaks escape out. It's not just for home safety, but can actually help improve that seal around your windows. And you can install efficient exhaust fans. Like many things with efficiency, there are multiple bonuses to these things. Like new exhaust fans are much quieter. Let me tell you, somebody who can be irritated by some of those noises, or if you're somebody who really doesn't like those background hums, having an efficient exhaust fan is a big benefit for that as well, because it's so quiet. So for bigger projects, you can get a contractor. And so they can identify existing insulation R values, R value being the way that we measure how effective our insulation is. So the bigger the R value, the better it is at keeping the heat in. A contractor can inspect vapor barriers. She can evaluate and improve attic and foundation insulation, can do any combustion safety testing, and of course, install a heat pump. Maybe you're noticing a theme here with our efficiency, our energy, taking advantage of your climate and the technology that we have for us. So here's some pictures. Yeah, Lynn.
Looks like we're frozen again.
Maybe it's a solar flare or something. Who knows what's going on? Something between here and the Matsu.
Yeah, I think it's because I've got my 6-year-old stepdaughter streaming a movie while I'm doing this. I think that's probably the issue. So that she could be busy. Great parenting, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm back now.
Yep.
So on the left here, yeah, and put a timer on your exhaust fans. That's a great one. So on the left here, you can also see that with this infrared thermometer, these darker areas are areas where it is colder, which means that the heat is leaking out of the attic. And so when we go into the attic and look at these pictures closer on the right side, then you can see that there were a bunch of things sitting on top of our insulation and compacting that fiberglass insulation. And so a really easy fix for that is even this person just put in boards and organized the attic. It didn't take a lot of, really fancy materials or brand new insulation, just providing that, getting the things off of the fiberglass so that it's not compacted. Fiberglass insulation works a lot better when it's able to be spread out and trap air better. So that was an easy fix right there to be able to save energy. So that's our heating. Remember, our heating is our biggest way of saving energy and reducing our energy and reducing our carbon footprint because we are using that oil, natural gas. Domestic hot water. There's some few things that we can do here to save on our energy. You can check what temperature your heat is set at. If your hot water, if you have a dial set to 140, you can actually save 6 to 10% on your energy bill just by turning it down to 120. Now, for safety, you don't want to turn it any lower than 120, but you can turn it down to that temperature and be able to save that. And also, again, bonus, not have scalding or have a safety issue with it being too hot as well. Other things that you can do, of course, is not letting the water run. I think we've been hearing that for 50 years, but still something to recognize. It is a place to save energy. Fixing those leaky faucets and running toilets. Installing low flow shower heads and aerators on faucets, again, small, easy things. And if the manufacturer says that it's okay, you can add a blanket to your older water heater and even potentially upgrade or downsize your water heater, especially if you have an older system. So that's your tips for water, short and sweet. Biggest one, of course, is checking the temperature that your hot water is set at. On the electricity side of things, instant water heaters. Yeah, so those ones are definitely a lot more efficient than keeping your hot water constantly heated at all times, right? Because if you have a boiler that is holding the water at that temperature at all times, then that is going to use more energy than an instant hot water heater that's only heating it as you are running the water. For electricity, we really talk about knowing how much that you're using. You can't manage what you don't measure. So paying attention, using your electric bill. Here's an example that was generously shared with me, AARP electric bill. And so you can look at how much energy is being used. This one's on the larger side. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing there's a heat pump involved in this house. And so a little bit on the higher side, but you're able to track this and look at your trends over time. So this is a great little graph that is included with your electric bill. And you can see what your residential rate, so ALP, about 12 cents per kilowatt hour compared to 19 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour for us up here in Anchorage and Mat-Su. Another cool thing is your online management system will also have even more details. So like a nice little graph looking at comparing your temperature to your electric usage as well that you can see over time. So if you're a nerd about energy, which I'm just going to guess you might be if you're here with us tonight, this is a great way to dig into it, is taking advantage of that online portal for your electricity usage. And so once you're looking at this, you're keeping track of your electricity. Lighting is going to be the biggest savings on your appliances and your electricity, aside from, of course, any heating that you're using from electricity. So, there's that one. Again, we've been hearing for 50 years, turn off the lights when you're not using them, using that more efficient lighting. Most of us are aware, of course, of LED light bulbs, but checking those, especially ones that use the most. Potentially Energy Star fixtures and lamps. You can check, upgrading some older ones that might be using things inefficiently, but really thinking about these timers and occupancy sensors, just like Clay was saying earlier about timer on your exhaust fans, timers on your lighting is a great way to look at this as well. Occupancy sensors, more think of that on commercial size. Of course, I'm in a lot of schools, so I see those in schools a lot. And yep, I'm getting there. Timers on heat tapes are a great one too. So we also have, here's a quick comparison. If you're not sold yet on LEDs, you have a huge savings on how many watts an LED uses. And of course, they last a lot longer. So if we do some quick math in Juno at 12 cents per kilowatt hour, then, oh, did I not finish this math? Okay, well, it's a big savings. I could have sworn, did I not do that? All right, you'll just have to trust me on that one. There's a big savings. It saves you a lot of money. Use LEDs. All right, another thing, here's my fun, do the math. You do the math, Clay. You let us know. Throw it in the chat for us. I don't want to use up all my time. Already at 20 minutes. Got to make sure I keep going. Give everyone else time to chat too. So there's these things called vampire loads or phantom loads. So we say don't feed the vampire. And vampire loads or phantom loads are these things that are using energy when stuff is still plugged in, but not turned on, but you're not using it. So things, a very small phantom load, for example, would be like the clock on your microwave, right? Still drawing a tiny bit of energy even when you're not using it. But if you have bigger phantom loads, could be things like TVs, if you still have an old cable setup, right, that is turning on, perhaps you have DVR system. Those things are using energy all the time, even when they're not necessarily being used for what you think of them. And so anything that you can put onto a power strip and turn off when not used is great. Like I have my home office set up, I have my computer and my second monitor and my task light and all of those things all connected onto a power strip, and that gets turned off at the end of the day when I'm done working. Turn off the TV, like I said, that's a big phantom load, and anything associated with the TV too. Put things in sleep mode or use those sleep timers as well. Again, timers, powerful tool, use our technology to our advantage. And some power adapters and chargers too also draw energy. If you're feeling them get warm and nothing is plugged into them, then that means that they're still drawing electricity even when they're not charging something. Newer ones or higher quality ones won't do this, but some will, older ones, or maybe ones that aren't as high quality will still draw some energy. Timers, have I mentioned timers yet? So take advantage of this, right? This is a great one, like lamps for when you're gone, especially if you're going to be gone for a longer time. I know a lot of people use these for having the lights come on and off at certain times of the day. But you can also take advantage of this. We use these for our holiday lights. So for our tree and inside and our outdoor string lights that we have up, we use timers for this. They're not on all of the time. Heat tape, Clay put that in the chat. That is another one that's good to use on heat tape. Yep, it can be a big one. You don't necessarily need it on all of the time. I think some sensors also are temperature dependent. Like I have that for the hot water heater and my horse's water trough is temperature dependent. So it's not drawing energy if the temperature is warm enough. So timers, take advantage of them. And of course, with electronics, when you are replacing major electronics, purchase those Energy Star rated appliances. One thing that you can also do with that Energy Star rated dishwasher you have is use it. That uses way less water, especially all that hot water for washing dishes, than if you're doing them by hand, by a lot. And only run it when full, or use that setting that says that half load when you have that half load in there. Clean out the lint from your dryer and check the temperature on your fridge or freezer. Kind of like when we think about anytime we're looking at this temperature, this is using a lot of energy to be able to pull that heat out. This is that reverse, I'll call this a reverse heat pump. I know we talk about heat pumps as reverse refrigerators. So I'll call a refrigerator a reverse heat pump. And so we're pulling that heat out of the fridge and the freezer. And so making sure that you have it in that ideal range and not colder than you need it can save. Cleaning the coils and checking for leaks in the door seal. You can put a piece of paper in the door and close it on it. And if that paper can be easily pulled out or falls out, then the seal on your refrigerator is not very good. So that's a great way to check that seal and know if you're having some leaks from that. So here's a takeaway, right? Energy conservation is free. Doesn't cost any money to be able to make some behavior changes. So these are some of the easy ones that I'm sure most of us already know, right? Like turn off the lights, put our electronics on the power strips, turn them off when we're not using them, turning down the heat on your thermostat and water heater. Again, heating is going to be your biggest energy cost, and so therefore the biggest energy savings that you can make, and carbon reduction as well. Efficiency, right? So looking at our technology and better materials may cost you some money up front, but will save you in the long run. And some efficiency measures are really low cost or do it yourself and can make some big differences. Please do check out the energy assessment and the home energy saving tips that Clay linked in the chat, because those will help you out a lot for identifying what those are. If we think about our payback, like if we invest this money in this efficiency items, how long is it going to take us to pay it back? Well, setback thermostat where we can program it to reduce our energy, that's going to be less than a year. Lighting, a year or less, switching out any bulbs that aren't LEDs already. Heat pump is going to be closer to 9 years, but when your heating systems last that long, huge savings, still going to be able to do that. Something like an HVAC or boiler is going to be a little bit longer, like 15 years. And anything related to the envelope is going to be really expensive to do because it can be really tricky to get all into that envelope and fix it. So it's going to be a longer payback. And unless you have really major issues with your envelope, just be paying attention and making sure that you're seeing what makes sense for you. And I'll say it again, you can't manage what you don't measure. So look at, what your energy bill is each month. Pay attention to how often you're getting your heating oil delivered. And so then become aware of those habits and the usage. You can use an electricity monitor. AARP lends these out. Again, you can go bug Clay at the REAP office and Juno. He's got some who are happy to lend out a little thermometer. And you can do these huge savings, reduce your carbon footprint, save some green and be green at the same time. I'm sure that connection won't get old through this series. And check out these resources, the ones that Clay shared in the chat. You're going to hear from Alaska Heat Smart as well tonight, Renewable Juno. Alaska Housing Finance Corporation has some great resources. They have an online library with a bunch of resources that you can check out. And we have a library of resources as well as on our own website at Renewable Energy Alaska Project. And so you don't have to be an expert to start saving money. You can do it. You've got this. Like Steve said, we want to empower you to be able to make these choices. And so even if sometimes these choices seem small and may not have a huge impact on the carbon overall, you doing this and sharing with others and teaching others, we can all make a difference together. So please do share. Gunaschish Koyana Mashi, I really very much appreciate this time. I'm gonna stop my share, make sure I didn't miss any questions.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Really, you covered a lot of territory there, quite efficiently. And I think might have time for one more question if somebody has a burning one for Colleen. If not, I think we're going to just go ahead and jump on to introducing Chandler Kemp to talk about home energy audits and as a tool for taking kind of the next steps from some of the things Colleen's talked about. Chandler's an energy consultant based here in Juneau and Southeast, grew up in Haines, degree from Stanford, has worked with Alaska Heat Smart on our thermalized heat pump campaign. And you can find out more about him and some of his cool work like energy efficiency for fishing boats and on his website under Kempe Energetics. Chandler, thanks for participating in this. The screen's yours. And again, feel free to put questions for Chandler in the chat, please.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Steve. So like Steve said, I have a small energy efficiency services company, and one of those services is providing energy audits. So my goal with this, I have about 10 minutes prepared here. And my goal is to communicate what's involved with an energy audit and what type of results you can expect from them. So my goal when I perform an energy audit is to quantify the impact of changes that you might make to your home. So there's 3 steps to that. The first is measuring the surface area and the air infiltration and the insulation R value and all sorts of characteristics of your home. So this is a picture, of me measuring the depth of insulation in somebody's attic. I really get down and dirty and try to get an accurate measurement of how the house is constructed. And the second step is developing a mathematical model of the home. So to do that, I take all the data that I collected on site and put it into a computer program. And then the computer program gives an estimate of energy use as the house is today, as well as how energy use would change if we make improvements to the house. And then the final step is communicating results from the model with the homeowner. And so that always includes a report that documents the findings, as well, but ideally also a phone call or an in-person meeting to talk about the report and address any questions. So the 3 steps: measuring the house, developing a model, and then communicating results. So when I go to a house to do an energy audit, I'm usually inside for 2 to 4 hours. Most of that time is spent making measurements of windows and doors and insulation. But then the final hour or so is spent doing a blower door test. And so I've got my blower door set up in the doorway of my apartment. So I'm gonna give you a little show and tell here. There we go. Let me restart this slideshow. In fact, I'll stop sharing so that you can get a full view here. At least I think I will. There it is. Stop share. All right. So this is, and I can also introduce you to my my dog Bailey here. She might bark when I fire up the fan. So if you hear some barking, don't worry. It's just Bailey. Bailey. But this is the blower door in the background here. So it's a canvas sheet that I put in the doorway to the house, and it's got a big fan in the bottom. And it works by, you can turn on the fan and it blows air out of the house to maintain a pressure difference between the inside and outside. And it measures how much air it takes to maintain that pressure difference. And that gives us a direct measure of how leaky the house is. So that's the blower door test. Is one of the key parts of the audit. And another benefit of that is while the blower door is running, it's pulling cold air into the house, so it makes it really easy to find those sources of air infiltration that Colleen was talking about. And I'll even walk around with an infrared camera, and so that you can get a visual image of the air coming into the house. So those are the 2 pieces: the measuring the house, and then the blower door test. That's what I'm doing when I'm on site. And then the next couple of slides, I'll show you what results from an audit look like. So this is going to be an example from this house of some that I worked in last year as part of the thermalized Juno program. And the owner was generous enough to let me share this picture and some of her results for this presentation. So one type of result is a description of how the house currently uses energy. So it might look something like this, where the costs of energy loss through the house are broken down by different house components. So this is saying heat loss through the floor costs about $199 per year in this house. Heat loss through the walls and doors costs about $600 a year. And then finally, air infiltration. So again, those leaky places that Colleen mentioned, where you might be able to seal them with some caulk, In this house, we're costing about $600 a year. So I think this is helpful to conceptualize sort of what parts of the house you might want to focus on if you're thinking about efficiency improvements. The second type of result is going to quantify the benefit of retrofits. And so in the report, there'll be a table that looks something like this. You'll have a column that lists a bunch of different energy efficiency retrofits you can consider. And then some concept of how cost effective they might be. And then the savings that you can expect per year. So for example, here we're saying if you caulk and seal the house, if you reduce those air leak points, you're probably going to save about $75 a year, for this example. And we might expect that caulk to break down in 10 years or so. So as long as you can get a contractor to do the work for less than $700, it's a pretty good investment. Similarly here in that house I showed the picture of, in the basement, there were some sections where maybe somebody forgot to insulate them, or maybe the insulation had fallen out over the years. And so insulating those areas of the basement that didn't have any insulation, that's going to save about $200 a year. And that insulation is going to last a long time. So even if it's kind of expensive to get it done, it's a pretty good investment. Then the final example I've got here is, again, that house had metal frame windows. So metal frame windows are about the least efficient type of frame you can have, because that metal just conducts heat right out of the house. So if you went back and replaced all the metal frame windows in the house with insulated frame windows, you could save about $150 on your heating bill. And they'll last quite a while. So break-even cost of about $2,500. But the problem is those replacing windows is so expensive. Even though you get significant savings, it's not a great financial investment. So if you're going to do that, you should be doing it for some reason other than saving money. Yeah, so I want to take, here's some hot takes on what are common cost-effective energy efficiency measures that I see when I'm doing audits in Juno. And it was great to see that a lot of these overlap with what Colleen was saying. So I'm glad we're on the same page. So Colleen hit programmable thermostats. They're great. They don't cost very much. You can turn the heat down when you're away from the house or asleep, and the payback is very good. Finding uninsulated spaces is surprisingly relevant to a lot of houses. So I think everybody knows that insulating your house is important. But I'm often surprised by how frequently I'm in a house and there's areas that are uninsulated for one reason or another. One of the really common cases is what the picture is on the right here, where there might be like a stem wall or maybe even like a cement slab in a heated part of the house. And the edge of that slab is uninsulated. And so heat can easily conduct through the cement and out the side of the slab into the ground and away from the house. And so, Colleen mentioned that improving the envelope of the house is often not cost effective. And that's definitely true. But the exception, I would say, is if there's a part that has no insulation, then the payback can be pretty good, especially for something like this, where just adding rigid foam on the outside doesn't require getting into the envelope too much, but can have a big impact on your heating bill. There's been a lot about heat pumps. I'll just say that they're great, especially in a climate like Juneau. And then the final point I wanted to put here is air sealing. And again, I think this is something where everybody knows having a drafty house is inefficient, but I wanted to highlight a couple of items that I see a lot in Juneau. So the first is thinking about dampers on vents. So this is like if you have a range hood vent or even a bathroom fan. There should be a vent either on the exterior of the house or integral to the fan itself, so that when you're not using the fan, there's not an open path for air to flow in and out of the house. And so just checking to make sure that there is a damper there and that it's not stuck open can be a really worthwhile thing to check on. Another one is recessed lights. So if you've got lights that are mounted inside your ceiling and they were put in before LEDs, the can that the light is in probably had to be vented to the outside or to the attic so that your incandescent bulb didn't overheat in that recessed can. So that means it's just a direct path for cold air to come into the house. And so now with an LED, they don't produce so much heat, so they don't have to be vented. So you can take out those cans and put in a regular fixture or even just a surface mount LED that's really thin on the ceiling and have a similar lighting quality, but without the vent to the outside. So the picture I've got up here is, I think, from the house that I showed a couple slides ago. where she had a recessed can light. And this is an infrared image that I took during the blower door test. And so the blue you can see is because there's all this cold air coming in through that recessed can. So that's a pretty common one that I see in Juneau, where people can replace those cans with LED lights and a regular electrical fixture and reduce air infiltration a lot. The last point I've got up there is like air sealing around doors. And so again, it's easy to think about weather stripping, but often the problem is for houses that a house might have good weather stripping, but the door is still really drafty. And often that's because the door is warped, or maybe even the latch, like maybe on my apartment, actually, one of the screws holding the latch in had been stripped. And so even when I shut the door, even though the weather stripping was good, it just wouldn't shut tightly. And so just taking out that screw and putting in a bigger screw, had a nice impact on the air infiltration. So I think when you're thinking about weather stripping, going that extra step to think about sort of the whole system of the door is worthwhile. Okay, so this is the last piece I wanted to touch on. I think Jesse mentioned in his presentation earlier that his house went from like 2 stars to 5 stars after he did all the retrofits. So that's a huge improvement. And I just wanted to give a little bit more context for what the star rating is. So the star rating is a system that was developed by the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. And the general idea is that the more energy efficient the house is, the more stars you get. And it's more or less proportional to the amount of BTUs that you consume in a year. And so for that example house I showed, it was like a 2x4 construction, R13, so regular fiberglass bats for insulation. I think it was getting about 8 air changes per hour, so a little bit higher than average air infiltration for a house in Juneau. And that ends up being a 3-star plus house. So you can kind of think of the 2x4 house, kind of average construction, it ends up being around 3 stars. With the energy efficiency measures that I suggested, it could get up to a 4-star plus house. And then to get up into like the 5 or 6 star range, you really need to be really thorough about the insulation. So at least 2x6 stud walls, ideally more. A heat pump really helps with the star rating. Like a tight envelope. So maybe the house that I gave as an example was around 8 air changes per hour. A really tight house will be down around 1 air change per hour. And that's what it takes to get in this 5 to 6 star range. And then at the other end of the spectrum, if you have a 1 or 2 star house, is going to be like a 1930s house from Juneau that maybe has no insulation in parts of the walls, and maybe has a very old boiler that's only 76% efficient instead of a new condensing boiler that's 95%, that sort of thing. So I hope that gives you a little more context for what the Energy Star rating is. Yeah, and I think that's all I've got. So I'll pause here, and if anybody's got questions, I'd welcome them. If there's time, Steve.
Yeah, anybody got any questions there for Chandler? Thank you, Chandler, very much. That was a very clear explanation of what a energy audit can do for you. I think is a great follow-up from Colleen's information. Why don't we? You can still put questions in the chat if you want to, but let's go ahead and move along to talking about Alaska Heat Smart and its services, which is going to focus a bit on heat pumps, but also on some other topics. Andy Romanoff's the executive director of Alaska Heat Smart. He's also a board member of nonprofit Renewable Juno that's been offering information and workshops on heat pumps since 2016. Andy, the platform's yours.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Linda and Colleen and Chandler and everyone here. This is a great load of information for people, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm just going to briefly talk about Alaska Heat Smart, like Steve said, and some of the services that we offer. Primarily, or the most important piece maybe that I'll address for for folks out there in Zoom land is the Alaska Heat Smart Home Heat Pump Assessment, which is kind of what I'll hit towards the end. So let me just bear with me while I find my screen here. Is that working? I can't see what you're seeing.
It says double click to enter full screen mode. Says you.
Technical failure here. Hang on, let me start over. Try that again. How's that?
Well, it's saying you've started it, but and says you need to double click to enter full screen mode. There you go.
How about that? Okay, let me just find my notes here. Everything's all over the place. This is why we test things, right? Because we did test this. Okay.
There you go. You got it.
Well, I'm not seeing my notes, so I'm just gonna go without. But yeah, so Alaska Heat Smart, nonprofit public-private partnership that came together back in 2019 with the help of all sorts of different agencies, and it brings together lots of different expertise from multiple sectors of the community, our local power utility, nonprofits like Renewable Juno, the city and borough of Juneau, architects, builders, economists, policy people, all on board with the aim of a rapidly increasing heat pump adoption in Juneau and lowering the cost of home heating for local residents, and as well as for other Alaskans outside of Juneau. We're increasingly getting calls from around Alaska for advice. And so essentially what we are trying to do is act as a bridge between the consumer of either, say, a heat pump or energy efficiency improvements and the installers and the contractors that offer those services. And we do that in a number of ways, and we have a number of programs which I'll get to in a moment. But essentially we offer education and sort of consulting on these issues, really trying to make things easier and more understandable for the consumer and for those looking to save money in all the different ways that people have outlined here tonight. And so why Alaska Heat Smart? Why do we need this service? It's very likely that if you, the homeowner today, decide I want to get a heat pump, and you reach out to 3 or 4 different contractors for, to get some different quotes from them, more than likely you're going to get very different numbers coming at you and very different packages of options, ranging anywhere from, say, $5,000 maybe to $20,000. It happened to me. It happens to almost everybody. Those people who don't go through Alaska Heat Smart, that is. And so when I did this a few years back, maybe I think it was 2018 or so, I received 4 different quotes. Again, it was between, say, $5,000 and maybe $15,000, and all sorts of different equipment and options and plans and programs. And I felt like this person here on the screen. My head was spinning and I was confused. And so what did I do? I did nothing. I just got paralyzed and I just kept burning oil until finally a new contractor came to town and offered great pricing and just said, let's just do this nice and simply, and take out your oil stove and put in a simple 1-to-1 heat pump, and I was in and on board. And so Alaska Heat Smart is here to eliminate the confusion and streamline the process, and to make it easier for you, the homeowner, to know what your home needs and how to go about getting that. And so we're growing fast. Last couple of years, we're just giving advice and education and assessments to homeowners. And we're now developing all sorts of new programs. And I'll just briefly go through them. We've got currently our Thermalize program, Thermalize Juno, and what we're calling a Healthy Homes program, which is a kind of our first big lower income energy efficiency retrofit and safety and efficiency assistance program. We have a newly developed or actively developing lower income heat pump assistance program for lower income qualified families. We have a heat pump loan program, which has been in existence now for I think about a year. And we have our foundational home heat pump assessment program, which I think is what maybe you folks would be most interested in. I'll get to that in a bit, but just briefly, Thermalize program, we've joined with many partners throughout the state. Cold Climate Housing Research Center in Fairbanks being the primary partner on this program, where through a sort of bulk purchase and neighborhood efficiency system, we've been able to offer lower priced heat pumps, lower priced energy efficiency home retrofits, and a really streamlined and simple process for homeowners to get into these things quickly and effectively. It's been really effective. It's the first Thermalize campaign in the state, kind of similar to what are called solarized campaigns, which have happened all over the country. And essentially, it's just a really efficient way to bring a whole bunch of people together, lower prices, and move things forward. Sometimes fairly quickly. In our case, it hasn't been all that quick. We're about halfway done, but we're looking at up to probably 80 heat pump installations through this program, and about 20 at most home energy retrofit programs. And we had about 165 different applicants. So it's been we consider it a huge success, especially for our first time out. The end goal of this is to create a guidebook manual so other communities can actually take on these concepts as well and implement them and share our lessons and our successes in their communities. We just received a $2 million grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Really exciting boost to our programming. And essentially it'll allow us to remediate maybe 90 lower income family homes, not only ideally removing their oil-based heating systems and replacing them with heat pumps, but performing some air sealing work, some insulation work, tightening up leaks and doors and windows, and getting rid of mold and mildew issues and any sort of irritants like dirty carpet causing asthma type situations and those sorts of things. So this is just getting going. We're still working with HUD to get this thing rolling, and it'll go on for about 4 years or so. Our newest developing program, which we're still stirring around names for, this is my latest, the Renewable Energy Heating Assistance Program, REHAP. You can rehab your home, get a home rehabilitation. Again, this is a community grant, thanks to our Senator Lisa Murkowski, who has provided Heat Smart with a good infusion of funding, which will probably allow us to reach maybe 70 at most lower income family homes. Again, and this is primarily looking at just heat pumps without the whole home remediation piece, so a little more focused. And we'll probably be working with Renewable Juno's Juno Carbon Offset Fund on this, because they've been doing it for 3 years now and have a process in place for vetting applicants and assessing homes and making sure that such homes will actually work well with a heat pump as an addition. Onwards to our loan program, we're seeing increased uptake of our loan program. People don't really seem to like loans. It's been slow to bring people on board to this, but if you're a homeowner who has had an Alaska Heat Smart Home Assessment, you are then eligible to apply for this loan. And at 4 to 6%, say you get a $7,500 loan for 5 years to finance the installation of your heat pump and the wiring of that heat pump, you're really only going to spend like $13 a month on interest. And on average, for Juno at least, a home that puts in a heat pump and displaces much of their oil burning will be saving about $70 a month. So the cost to have this loan to free up maybe your own capital for whatever you need and actually move ahead with this energy efficiency improvement is far less than the savings that you will actually incur from having the heat pump. So if you don't have the money and you don't like loans, well, we encourage you to like loans because this loan is really good. So it's a great way to get into the game, and it's really very cost effective. But what people really enjoy and really like are the Alaska Heat Smart home heat pump assessments. One, they're free, so the price is right. You can't argue with free. It's my favorite price for just about anything. Essentially what we do is you go to akheatsmart.org and you click on the home heat pump assessment tab and you fill out a quick application. We then ask you for your oil use history or maybe your propane use history, or if you don't have that, then we get permission from you to obtain your electrical meter data from the local utility. We ask a few questions about how you use your home, your lifestyle, what you're looking for, what you're interested in, what your goals are. And we roll all that into a custom calculator that was created by the Cold Climate Housing Research Center and tweaked by our energy assessor, Bob Deering, masterful renewable energy expert that we have on board here at Heat Smart. And Bob and possibly one or two others who are occasional energy advisors for us will find a time to go to the home, meet with the homeowners, walk through the home, look for any potential energy efficiency issues or problems or concerns, get a good sense of how the airflow will work throughout the home, find a good place for a heat pump, if a heat pump isn't indeed an option. But in short, the report will give you options. Like, these heat pumps will work for you in these locations, in this manner of configuration. You should consider this, you should consider that. It's a great source of information. We've done hundreds of them now, and people just love them. And Kathy Muse really summed it up the best right here in the middle. Without the Alaska Heat Smart home assessment, I wouldn't have bought the heat pump. Plain and simple. We hear that a lot about our assessments. It's empowering. People get empowered. They gain confidence in understanding how their home works, kind of what Chandler was saying with the energy audits. You learn a lot about how your home works, what maybe is not working, what you need to improve. But you come away with a sense of knowing what you need and what may work best, unlike that person back at the beginning with their head spinning and all the options coming at them. Now you've got a report that says, this is the option I want to consider. And you can take that to the installers, to the contractors, and say, this is what I want. What's it going to cost me? As opposed to, I want a heat pump. I don't know anything about them. What do I do? Now you're in charge because you've had the assessment. Not only can you get the loan and get into the game in that way, but you now have control over your data, your home, and you are in a much better position to get a direct feedback from the installer. And so we have a little video here from a thermalized Juno participant, Allison Bidlack, who lives in Douglas, Alaska. She swapped out her oil stove for a heat pump, and she is ready on her couch there to tell us all about it.
My name is Allison Bidlack, and I live in Douglas. And I got this heat pump last fall as part of the Thermalized Juno campaign. And I got it because there used to be Toyo stove right here, kind of where that plant is. And it was just kind of big and took up a lot of space in the living room. And it always smelled faintly like diesel fumes in here. And I wanted something that didn't smell like diesel and that was kind of a greener energy source.
Oops. We seem to have lost sound.
The other thing is this heat pump kind of pushes the air across the room. So the kitchen, which is on the other side of the room, was always cold with the Toyo, but it's actually much warmer now with the heat pump.
And so that small unit above you is the entire indoor heat pump, and
But it is. I do use some baseboards upstairs as additional heat sources.
how big is the house? And
The house is 1,500 square feet.
how did it work during the winter?
It worked really well. This is the unit, and it just kind of runs all the time. It does create a little bit of a glacier as the water condenses and drips out. So when you install one of these, don't put it right in front of your garage like I did, or your front door. But yeah, it works really well. It just seems to withstand the wind and the snow.
Was it complicated to have it installed?
No, it was actually surprisingly easy. So the electrician had to come first to install, I think, a dedicated circuit and install the wiring, and that was like a day. And then the guys came and installed the heat pump, and that was just a couple hours. So I was kind of shocked how fast it was. And it's been great. I love it. It's super quiet. It's a really nice heat. Yeah, I would recommend one. They're great.
I hope everybody heard that. I think we lost her for a second there. Douglas is far away, so.
My name is
wait a minute.
Allison Vidlac, and I
Gotta
live
get
in
on for that one.
Douglas. My name is Allison Vidlac, and I live in Douglas.
Thank you, Andy. Are you, is that pretty much the end of your
Well,
set?
there's one more slide, but I don't know how to move, get
Okay.
onto it without,
I got the heat pump last.
yeah. We'll just close out from there. I just had the closing credit slide, but we can get to that after in a
Okay.
little while.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andy, for that description of Alaska Heat Smart Services. I'm going to just talk for a minute or two. The session so far is focused on the things that you can do to reduce your personal household carbon footprint and save money. And I'm going to just make a pitch now for a couple of things that you can do to help other people do that and to support group efforts that can make kind of a bigger community-wide difference. And one of the most important things that any of us can do is talk about these kinds of solutions and about our experience with them. That's the most important climate solution there is. Do what you can do in your sphere of influence. Every little bit helps and builds momentum, but it's really when you share information with friends and family and other people about the good habits and the positive things that can be done that those individual efforts really start to add up. So talk about the things you're doing when you do them. And then the other thing is get involved in community, state efforts. Juneau's got a number of examples. The Juneau Commission Sustainability and the CBJ have a climate action plan and a Juneau renewable energy strategy. And we're always looking for help on those projects and programs. The Renewable Juneau nonprofit here is a local advocate, and it could use volunteer help. You can follow Renewable Juneau's efforts through their website or on social media, Facebook. Similarly, REAP with its statewide efforts, they can always use donations, accept money to help support their efforts, and they can use, they're regularly trying to help pull together state policies that support renewable energy, and they can use support through the political process on those kinds of things. So yeah, so those are kind of the two things. Talk about these issues and join in helping people who are working on them. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Andy briefly to talk about one of Renewable Juneau's unique programs that can help when you've reached the point of doing as much as you can do individually, there's some things you can do to help other people through our carbon offset program. Andy, you want to take that on?
Yeah, sure. Really briefly. And again, I'll struggle with my screen sharing here. So see what happens. Hey, look at that. Kind of working, huh? Maybe. Is that full screen?
No, but go with it.
Go with it. All right, I'm going with it. You can see the whole package here. So back in 2019, Renewable Juno, thank you, Steve, for talking about Renewable Juno, started its Juno Carbon Offset Fund. So we had been busy for years educating people about heat pumps and promoting heat pumps and trying to push people to installers to get heat pumps, and realized that we were really missing a segment of the population, a fairly large segment of the population, and that was those people who just don't have the money to get heat pumps. And that essentially, in a nutshell, was the birth of the Juno Carbon Offset Fund. And so in a nutshell, the Juno Carbon Offset Fund installs air source heat pumps for free in the homes of income qualified oil burning home owning applicants. And so it's kind of this fine balance between their income, between the amount of oil they burn, and how well their house is suitable for a heat pump. But it's been tremendously successful. We have a web store at junocarbanoffset.org where anyone can go and try out a different number of options to calculate their own personal carbon footprint, or that of their home, or that of their family, or that of their trip, or their car, or their cruise to Alaska. There's a zillion different options there for people to choose from. Many people just decide to subscribe, and that's what I do. I calculated my family's carbon footprint. It comes to about $25 a month. And so I spend $25 a month automatically. It just gets charged to my card, and it's done. It's about $300 a year. It's really simple. And so essentially the consumer goes to the store, they buy their offset products, so to speak. And then that revenue flows to our financial manager, the Juneau Community Foundation, who kind of stores all our money for us and kind of acts as a third-party verification body for us. At the other end, you've got the homeowners who find out about us through various ways and means. If they meet income requirements, which is essentially 80% of median area income, if they're at that or lower, and what that would be for a family of four is about an annual income of $96,000. It's not a lot when you're considering all the expenses that they may have. And if they burn enough oil, 400 or 500 gallons a year or more, then they're very likely going to qualify, as long as they're not buried in assets or their home's not full of holes and whatnot. And so they can apply online. They can submit all their income and utility documentation to us. We have an advisory committee that is comprised of local community experts in housing and social groups and energy efficiency, and they will review applicants and their application materials. And if all goes well, then they get pushed to, guess what? Alaska Heat Smart. And Alaska Heat Smart sends in energy advisors to assess the home, make sure it's going to work, that it's there aren't certain issues like electrical issues, which are often something that really needs to be looked at carefully. All that gets assessed, and if that passes muster with Heat Smart, then they win, and local contractors are contacted, and the heat pump is installed. And from there, the family pretty much saves at least 50% or more on their home energy bills, and of course slashes their emissions. If they are if they had been heating with an oil stove, a small oil stove, that may go away completely. They could completely eliminate their oil burden and their emissions and be fairly carbon free. And so just some numbers here for you. Essentially, over the last 2.5 years, we've installed 24 heat pumps. We've got about 6 more lined up here for the next couple months, which are approved or imminently being approved. So this is going to jump to 30 here pretty soon. Each one of these has eliminated about 500 gallons of oil a year. So we've eliminated 12,000 gallons of oil a year through this program so far. Reached about 75 different family members. Over 250,000 pounds of CO2 prevented from being created annually. And it's a great program. Not only does it give you the creator of carbon, all of us creators of carbon, a place to tackle that carbon load that we don't have any choice to deal with, be it the fishing boat or the skiff or the car that we're just trying to run into the ditch to to move on to something better, or the travel expenses. Those all are things that we can't necessarily just be done with. And so this is an easy way to take care of that and also to help others in the process. And so encourage you to, if nothing else, just go onto the website and take a look at the carbon footprint calculator. It's kind of a rustic sort of version of a calculator. My stepbrother made it for us for free. He's a coder in California, but it does the job, and it tells you a lot about your actual input, or your impact, I should say. And it's very educational. So yeah, thank you. And this is what I tried to show earlier, just all of us who are involved here, and website addresses and whatnot. And thank you, Linda, for clapping. Appreciate that. I can't hear it, but I can see it, and it sounds great. Same with you, Colleen. And I will move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate everybody participating here. On behalf of the Commission on Sustainability, I want to thank all the groups and individuals that have come together to put this together, starting with Linda Kruger and Carolyn Brown from AARP, who approached us with the idea, and the statewide AARP office that's provided support. And in addition to presenters, Colleen, Chandler, and Andy, I want to thank Clay Good of REAP and Bob Deering of Heat Smart and Angeli Grantham from JCOS and Renewable Juno for contributing behind the scenes. Linda, the floor is yours to take us out here.
Nothing much more, Steve. You guys, everyone did such an amazing job tonight. I have chills going up and down my spine just for all the wonderful information. And I just had heat pumps installed at my rental house last week, and they're coming to my house very soon. So, and I love driving my electric vehicle. So I'm totally on board with you guys. Thanks so much. Just a quick plug for 3 more programs to go. So if you haven't signed up yet, I put the sign up information in the chat. Hopefully you got that. Next week, we'll be talking with Duff Mitchell from Juneau Hydro and exploring how to get around with transportation as a climate solution. Steve already mentioned that the following 2 weeks later, the following session will be on grub and garbage and food and waste, community gardens, recycling and composting and all that kind of good stuff. And then the final session on May 4th will be on building resiliency, community and personal human resiliency, and how we can stay healthy as individuals and a community. And so I'm really jazzed. I'm excited. If you pre-registered for this session on the AARP website, then you'll get a link in the next couple of days back to the recording. And I hope you'll share it with your friends and get them all excited as well, because that's part of what we want to do, is be contagious with this information and share it around. And if you didn't pre-register and you just found out about us somehow, then you can find the link on the AARP Alaska Facebook page or the AARP homepage. And get a hold of me if you're in Juneau, and I can help you figure that out, how to get to those if you've had a hard time. But thanks for sticking around. This has been terrific. And have a wonderful week and weekend. And a couple weeks, and we'll hopefully see you again 2 weeks from tonight. So I hope to see you come back. Thanks, everyone. Wonderful job, Steve and team.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.